Today we're talking about Skull and Bones, an upcoming game from Ubisoft. Have you ever wanted to sail a pirate ship and use cannons and rockets to blow people up? I only have one answer to that question. Yar har fiddly dee, I'm a pirate, so are ye.
So are ye. What do you think about the ship-to-ship combat we saw in the trailer in the gameplay footage for Skull and Bones here?
I think that it looked pretty much exactly like the Assassin's Creed ship-to-ship combat, which I suppose is a good thing because that's what this is based off of.
Gotcha. So, and you played Black Flag, right?
Yeah, quite a bit. My favorite part was the actual ship to ship combat and sailing around and fighting other ships and stuff. So
Was that combat, by the way, was the ship-to-ship combat, was it the same like first-person type of view for the combat, or was it a little different?
I believe, if I remember right, it was more third person. Like you had a camera kind of behind your main dude. I forget the guy's name in Black Flag, but um, the camera was actually behind him, so you could see like the entire deck of the ship and everybody on it. But you would also switch to a different view. If I remember right, there was the cannon view, like where you would aim your shots, and then there would also be um, like a lookout view of like somebody in the crow's nest.
Okay. It was a pretty smooth transitioning between those different positions and stuff like that in the game then?
As I recall, yeah, it's been a couple of years since I played, but yeah, you would just flip to a different viewpoint so that you could. One would be basically to scout out an area, obviously the crow's nest. The other would be, when you're in combat, you would be able to choose like the altitude of the shot you were making. Also the type of weapon, because you would have, if I remember right, you had a mortar and you would have like your regular guns, and I think you could even change the type of shot between like chain shot and grape shot.
Okay. So that's what it appeared to be kind of like in the gameplay I was watching today that we saw that there was like switching like you said between the crow's nest and the different types of guns. I was looking at the controls of what they did. It looks like there was different buttons for switching between them. This game seems very like a fast-paced pirate game. I don't know how Black Flag was, if it was fast-paced or not, but you've also played other pirate games. We've done that together
Sea of Thieves.
with Sea of Thieves. So we played Sea of Thieves. I think you played quite a bit more than me. The ship seemed to turn a little slower to me from there, and this game it seems like there's a lot more like quick pace turning going on,
Yeah.
and it seems a lot more like just heavily focused on ship to ship combat. They have like a boarding sequence animation cutscene, so you don't actually board into the other ships we saw, but I can kind of understand why they're doing that. At first, I was like, why don't you go ahead and jump on the ship? It'd be kind of cool. But I think when you look at it, it doesn't really make sense because the time it would take to get off your ship, it puts your ship in like the boarding would put your ship basically in a state of being vulnerable because.
Hmm.
And with such a fast-paced thing, it doesn't really make sense. It looks like you'd be combating multiple ships too sometimes, and even
Right.
forts and stuff. So it doesn't really make sense to be as much as
Yeah.
I'd like to do the boarding. It doesn't really make sense to do the boarding in the way of like you get to actually interact.
Yeah, in a multiplayer type game like this, especially one that would have PvP in it, you're not necessarily going to want to have the boarding action be a drawn out process because you could just as easily get attacked by a player or even just an NPC ship and be taken out that way while you're messing around with boarding actions. Which, like you said, I think that a boarding action, you know, like actually fighting ship to ship, with sword and pistol and stuff would be pretty cool. And they have that in the Assassin's Creed games, specifically Black Flag, but in other ones too, if I remember right. But in this situation, it wouldn't make as much sense because it's more again about the ship to ship combat.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that That's what I noticed. It needed a. If you want to keep such a fast-paced game, it doesn't really make sense. And I think it's kind of interesting. I don't think I've played a game like this before, so I'm kind of interested to see how it works. I think it will have a. I think it'll be pretty cool to do the kind of like the quick combat. It's kind of like I feel like the difference between when you're playing like a Call of Duty or a game versus a not a Battlefield quite sake. Well, maybe a Battlefield,
Um,
but like what's
there,
another game
but
that's a little slower?
well, I mean, there's several, but I mean, one of the ones that pops to my mind is like Postscriptum, which is a World War II game that's like very much all about um, communication and positioning, and which, in a way, like Sea of Thieves, like if you want to succeed in that game, you're going to want to communicate with the other people in the crew and have specific jobs for people, that kind of thing, which is exactly like that type of game. Whereas, like you said, this is more of a more actiony, uh, I guess arcade type style of game. Like you're doing. You're not necessarily like planning out your next thing and communicating with other people as much.
Yeah. Now, does that mean? Do you think that you can have more than two people in your fleet then, essentially, or is it going to just be like two player that you think is going to happen? Do you think it's just going to be two player?
From from what I understand, it's three different people in a group, and you can do three people in a group on a PvP server. And I don't know if that means like you can invite your friends and be like a group of your friends on a PvP server. I assume you can, but you can also do just PvE. So I don't know if that just means the three of you, or one or two of you on the same private session, or if that means that there will be other people and other groups that are also um, technically in a PVE type thing, so that you're not worried about getting attacked by players all the time, which I think is kind of nice. Which, in my opinion, is something that's really missing from the Sea of Thieves experience. Because as much as PvP can be fun, I don't necessarily always want to mess around with other people being jerks. Sometimes I just want to chill and sail the ocean and sink some NPC ships for funsies.
Right, just kind of pretend you're an overpowered pirate for a little bit.
Right.
I think one of the cool things I was looking at some of the is that you're going to go ahead. It sounds like you're starting with a basically a small ship, and you get a basic spear. They were talking, so you start with that, and then what you go into is you become this pirate, right? Because they said you wash it. You basically your previous ship drowned, or I mean not drowned. Your previous ship sunk, and so now that you were on, and so now what you're doing essentially is trying to build up from the ground. One of the things that you're going to be doing is crafting uh,
Hmm.
your weapons, your armor, and your ships, and you get these from blueprints from playing the game, from doing different contracts and stuff. It sounds like with
Hmm.
other pirates, which is kind of interesting. So you're not just like, oh, I'm gonna go buy these items. You're like, you are the better you do, the more infamy they called it. You can learn how to do different things and craft different items, which I think is kind of
Right.
cool. So you get better and bigger and better ships over time. The more the more you accomplish and stuff like that. And it appears different ways of getting infamy. It sounds like too in the game.
Yeah, there's what looks like NPC factions, and then you'll earn various rewards through those factions. I think that the crafting looked pretty neat. Like, I mean, it's basic. Like you gather stuff and then you craft whatever. But just the fact that you can kind of customize different ships in different ways, have different loadouts, whether it's the armor on the ship or the type of ship or the type of weapon on it, I think that's pretty neat. Um, the thing that I wasn't as enthused about was looking at the gathering. It looked a little bit silly in a way, like it was almost. like a mini game, like not a mini game, but like you would pull up next to an island and there would be a tree, and you would have to like it looked to me like you would have to click a button when like an axe swung back and forth or a saw moved back and forth, to cut it down faster. But there wouldn't actually be anybody cutting down the tree. You would just be cutting down the tree with your boat or something. So it looked kind of silly because there wasn't actually somebody cutting down the tree. Not a big deal, but just in general, the aesthetic of it looked kind of goofy.
Yeah, I think it'd be kind of cool if they like you're saying of having maybe your guys jump overboard, go ahead and start or they just appear, they just appear there and start they're chopping down or cutting into something. I think that'd be kind of cool. I don't know why they don't do something like that. Maybe they'll add that later.
Yeah.
I think that I agree. That looked kind of silly. They also talked about that you could do treasure maps. So I'm kind of curious on how that's going to all work out. Like, do you get off your boat and look around for the treasure and stuff like that? I don't know. Kind of cool.
Yeah, I don't know. They didn't detail that. And I noticed in the trailer, they specifically left some things out.
Yeah.
Like the boarding action just being a cinematic. We actually found that on like some gameplay of like some streamers or something they had in a different part of their video, but the actual trailer didn't even show that.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of wish they would have shown that more. The other thing I didn't remember seeing, but I noticed they did talk about a little bit was about in the trailer was there's a few different things that can affect you. So, they talked about storms. So it sounds like, you'll have to deal with some storms and that could cause maybe damage to your ship or something. I don't know. And then they also talked about your crew can betray you. So basically, if you don't give enough rations, and if you look at some of the stuff, items, there's like morale. So I'm guessing like you got to keep up your morale for your people, or they'll betray you and toss you overboard or something.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think there was anything like that in Assassin's Creed. I know you would lose crew and you'd have to like recruit more. I don't remember there being a morale thing, but it's been a bit, so it's possible that was a thing. But it is an interesting system that like you would have to kind of keep them happy, which makes sense, especially for a pirate game full of cranky pirates. So.
So it sounds like to me there's some different environmental things. So when it comes to like the game itself, besides if you're not doing PvP where you have to deal with other players, it sounds like there's gonna be stuff where you got to keep your crew happy, you got to watch out for storms. They talked about like powerful corporations and privateers for like pirate hunting and stuff like that. So it sounds like there's plenty of environment, plenty of other NPCs that, other mechanics you're going to have to deal with. It's not just, even if you do the PvE, there's actual things going on that, plenty of combat to deal with there, plenty of other mechanics to deal with that I think could keep it fun. But what they were talking about with PvP, I think you mentioned this earlier. They were talking about how you would actually like in the combat with PvP, you could drop your items or whatever, right? And they could pick them up. Was it all the items that you would drop, you think, or was it like some of the items you could, you would be able to keep without that wouldn't it just drop off?
That's what I was trying to figure out with the trailer too, because they mentioned something about some of your stuff would be dropped, and the way they made it sound was like you wouldn't lose all of your stuff, but I could be wrong on that. That was just the way it sounded to me in the trailer, was that you kept some of the things, so like you didn't have to worry about literally losing everything just because you got attacked, by another player. But
that makes sense. I think that'd be so you don't feel so bad for like playing for like 2
I
hours.
hope it works that way anyway, but
yeah. So you're not like playing for like 2 hours and you lose everything. So, and I would say that I think we noticed there was quite a bit of cosmetic stuff, which was cool, interesting. You get like pets and other like cosmetic things for your ship. The other thing I noticed is, they talked about the different ship types. there's like fire type and several different types of ships that you could essentially use for different types of it would be best for different types of missions, essentially. Like if you're trying to haul cargo, or if you're trying to, do combat more type of thing.
Hmm.
So it sounds like I wonder if you were able then to also choose different ships when you leave the dock, essentially. Be like, oh yeah, I want to take
Yeah.
my fire type ship,
The
or I want to take my like cargo ship type of thing.
the way they made it sound was that there would be you basically at some point you would have a fleet of ships, and you could have different loadouts for them for different purposes. One of the other ones was like having a smaller ship for hunting because there would be hunting of sharks and hippos and crocodiles and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And so the smaller ships would be used for that kind of thing as well, as opposed to, you know, bigger ships maybe not being as agile for trying to track down a shark kind of thing. Because
Okay.
they also showed like using harpoons and stuff
Yeah.
to grab sharks, which could be fun.
Yeah, I saw that. That was pretty cool. They hunted an alligator and stuff. So I think that'd be pretty cool. I didn't know that. I didn't know that they talked about doing it that way. I wasn't sure if when I first saw that if that was just essentially being the when you start out with I think it's called a Dow ship.
Hmm.
So that was pretty cool. And but yeah, that's interesting. You have like a fleet of ships to work with. I think that's pretty awesome. And you just choose
Yeah.
whatever you want. And lots of customization with your character too. It appears to be. So it definitely has plenty of you can fulfill your dreams as a pirate. It looks like, you know what I mean? So I think it's cool on that aspect. We'll actually have
Hmm.
to see how the gameplay actually is when once we can get our hands on it. Um,
Hmm.
but I think it looks interesting. Obviously, we know the game's been delayed for quite a while, but I mean, what's your kind of thoughts on the game overall?
I mean, I think the game has been delayed like two or three times now, because it was supposed to. I think it was originally announced in like 2016, 2017, and it was supposed to come out like 2019, 2020, and since then it's been delayed at least twice, I think. And yeah, but I think what they showed is kind of what they promised it would be, which was the Assassin's Creed Black Flag uh, ship to ship kind of stuff, um, but in a fully fleshed out game uh, format. So I think, from what I can tell, it's what they said it was going to be. Which, I mean, you can't really ask for more than that. I know a lot of people are down on Ubisoft right now too, and for some good reason. I don't completely disagree that Ubisoft's way of handling certain things is not the best. And one of the things that I am concerned with this game is how they're going to handle their microtransaction kind of stuff, because typically um, that's a big thing. Well, for most game developers, but Ubisoft often has a lot of microtransaction stuff with their games. My guess is it's going to be cosmetic type things, like skin for your ship, or this fancy pet to sit next to your wheel while you steer your boat, kind of thing. So we'll have to see how that works out. I think the game looks fun. I'd like to play it. Uh, I guess overall, I would say I'm cautiously optimistic, but I do know that because it's been delayed several times and because Ubisoft can be the way it is, it might end up having problems. It's hard to say.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the one things I would say about the game, I think that the game is looks good. I'm also cautiously optimistic. I think the what I would say there's some improvements that we mentioned that I think they should do. One of the other things I think is from my perspective, I like the gameplay it looked like from the first person, but I kind of would like to be able to see a third person view of more of the back, more of the ship
Hmm.
outwardly, like you talked about how Black Flag was, because I want to see my my pirate standing there,
Yeah.
staring sometimes. But I don't know if I didn't see that in the gameplay. I might have missed it, but it didn't look like they had that view. But I mean, if you did that view, also, it kind of gives you a better view than it would give you a decent view that more than having to use the crow's nest as much. So maybe they don't want to do that. So
Yeah, maybe. I don't recall seeing a third-person view of your, the I think it's the aft castle, basically where your navigator slash captain is standing and steering the ship. So I doubt it's there, but it's possible it might be just a click of a button changes your viewpoint. So it's hard to say.
okay.
I mean, a lot of times that is the way in games. Like, yeah, it might be mostly a first-person game, but if you press whatever, it's going to change the position of your camera. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll have to see. Well, it comes out, I believe, in November. We can look forward to more information then.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening today, my sexy peoples. We're going to go ahead and come back next week with Dune or whatever video we're going to get next.